Okay, good afternoon. Magandang hapon po mga ka-lockdown. I hope you can hear me loud and clear. Good afternoon mga ka-lockdown. I am Rafael Montes Jr. from UP CLRG, Center for Local and Regional Governance. People call me Paeng. And this is Counting the Costs, CLRG's webinar talk show series on the Mandanas ruling. This is our second installment. And thank you for joining us today, whether you're in Zoom, YouTube, or at the CLRG website. I hope you can stay with us for the next hour and a half as we talk about unpacking the full devolution mandate of the Mandanas ruling. If you remember last February 25, we had our first episode where we discussed with two CLRG affiliate experts the legal and fiscal implications of the Supreme Court's ruling on the Mandanas Garcia petitions. By the way, that episode is now available on our YouTube channel and as a podcast on Spotify, Google, or wherever you get your podcast. Back then, we were talking about broad strokes and exploring different scenarios because the details are still relatively unclear. But today, we hope to move a step closer towards clarity and less apprehension as we speak to DBM and DILG a little later. Sila yung malapit sa kusina, kumbaga. While we look forward to the LGU's additional revenue shares, today we will be unpacking the other dimension of the Mandanas ruling, which is the full devolution mandate. But before that, our big boss at the UP NCPAG would like to welcome you all to this online event. Ladies and gentlemen, our Dean at the UP National College of Public Administration and Governance, Professor Dan Sagil. Magandang hapon po, Dean.
Magandang hapon sa inyong lahat. Maraming salamat, Paeng. Welcome po to the second part of the webinar series on the Mandanas ruling. I would like to start by wishing you and your families my best for your health and safety in this time of COVID-19. I would like to express my gratitude to Assistant Secretary Rolando Toledo of the Department of Budget and Management and Director Annalisa Bonagua of the Bureau of Local Government Development of the Department of Interior and Local Government for accepting CLRG's invitation as resource speakers in this webinar. Likewise, my gratitude also to Director Alicia Celestino and the staff of the CLRG for hosting this event. I am very happy for your continuous hosting of this kind of exercise to share knowledge and experiences in managing public affairs at the local level and promoting the college in the public affairs conversation. Webinars such as this provide us an opportunity to learn, to discuss thoughts, network, share ideas, create new ideas, and to ignite motivation. The benefits in joining this webinar may differ for each of us, but through this exercise, we continue to expand our professional and personal development and are provided with information that we may not be able to generate internally from within our organizations. The knowledge and experiences we learn from others help us make well-informed decisions about policies, programs, and projects by putting the best available evidence. This approach stands in contrast to opinion-based policy, which relies heavily on either the selective use of evidence, like using single studies irrespective of quality, or on the untested views of individuals or groups, often inspired by ideological standpoints, prejudices, and or speculation. LGUs are very important for every heterogeneous society. It brings the government nearer to the people, allows for popular participation in the conduct of public affairs, acts as a two-way channel of communication, between the local population and the national government. As such, LGUs are well situated to respond to challenges at the community level. With the Mandanas ruling, local governments will have more resources to efficiently and expediently serve their constituents and improve and hasten the delivery of much-needed basic services. The ruling, I believe, will contribute to the maturation of the promised autonomy to local governments. There are many questions as to the potential effects and impacts of the Mandanas ruling. Fortunately for us today, we have resource speakers who have knowledge and experience in managing internal revenue allotments. Using what they've already learned and created can save a lot of time and resources in dealing with the changes and challenges that will be brought about by the Supreme Court decision. Next year, when the ruling comes into effect, we have to make adjustments. We must prepare ourselves on the effect of the Mandanas ruling on our organization, programs, and projects. We must improve our capability to continuously deliver quality services. We hope that this webinar will be an effective exercise for sharing information to understand, support, and promote local autonomy by generating relevant and up-to-date information and sharing of experiences. I am certain that CLRG is more than willing to provide assistance to you. I sincerely hope that the lessons learned in this webinar will assist all of us as we move forward towards local government development. Before concluding, allow me to thank all of you for your interest in this webinar. I trust that you would find this exercise to be a rewarding experience. Maraming salamat po at magandang hapon sa ating lahat.
Maraming salamat po, Dean Sagil. We will keep in mind those points as we proceed with our conversation this afternoon. And without further delay, I would like to bring in our distinguished panel who took some time off from their very busy schedules to speak to us today. Get your notes ready as we will be taking your questions after the interview. Joining us today from the Department of Budget and Management is the Assistant Secretary for Budget, Policy, and Strategy. He directly oversees the operations of the Budget Information and Training Service and the Fiscal Planning Bureau. He is also the official spokesperson of the DBM and Chief of the Secretariat of the Development Budget Coordination Committee, or DBCC, and the department's representative to the IATF on the management of emerging infectious diseases. Welcome po, Assistant Secretary Rolando Toledo. And from the Department of the Interior and Local Government, we have Director Annalisa Bonagua, who heads the Bureau of Local Government Development, or BLGD, which leads the development of policies and programs for capacity building of local government units. She supervises several CapDev programs on ease of doing business, improving competitiveness, climate change planning, SDG localization, and promoting the community-based monitoring system, or CBMS. Good afternoon po to our two panelists. Thank you for coming. Let's get cracking. And I would like to begin first with ASEC Toledo po, sir. Good afternoon po. Sir, we've been hearing about a draft executive order that contains the guidelines for the implementation of the Mandanas ruling next year, 2022. When can we have more clarity po? And can you give us maybe a sneak peek on what the executive order that the president is supposed to sign this year, yung mga contents niya po?
All right. So good afternoon to everyone. Good afternoon, Paeng. And first of all, I would like to thank the Center for Local and Regional Governance, or CLRG, for inviting me here to the second leg of the Policy Issues Forum webinar talk show series on the Mandanas Garcia ruling. So I'm really honored and look forward for our dialogue, as you mentioned, on this on the policy implications. Okay. Now, on your question as to when will the guidelines, or rather the executive order, will be coming out. So the EO or the executive order will be available for dissemination and public consumption upon approval of the office of the president, and hopefully within this month, April, or within the next 2 months or up to May, we have that make it available for public consumption, as mentioned as kung napirma na ng ating presidente. So yan. Okay. Now,
Meron po ba kayo ma-share na certain points from the EO that I think would be interesting for the local governments?
Okay. Ano naman, on that question, wala masyadong dinagdag doon sa level or anong delineation. Ang nakalagay doon is yung delineation of responsibility between the national government and different levels of LGUs. Nakalagay doon, part of that is the Devolution transition plan na ilalagay natin, which basically the unbundling of the devolved functions of the national government agencies per different levels of the department. Okay? And aside from that, mayroon din po tayo dong yung wala naman masyado nagdagdag except that yung devolved functions sa EO para sa mga LGUs. So bukod sa kung ano ang mga nakasaad sa 1991 Local Government Code at sa iba pang nauugnay na batas, so yun lang naman. Since the EO covers those departments and GOCCs with devolved functions. So basically, the EO aims to clarify the devolution of the provision of basic goods and services to the LGUs, as well as the determination of the functional assignments between the different levels of government in order to guide the LGUs. Yes, Pai.
Okay po. Asek, dun sa aming first episode, we had a guest, the Executive Director Novel Bangsal from the House of Representatives, CPBRD. And he said that it's a little tricky yung unbundling daw kasi the local government code only provides broad assignments to local governments. And because national agencies were still performing some functions within the devolved functions, he says that there needs to be a further clarification of the functional assignments because the local government code is, relatively broad in stating those. So we have a video, just a few seconds, and take a listen, and then I'll get your reaction.
Okay.
That would be a responsibility for DBM and DOF to really to really identify, to disaggregate these functions para again dapat klaro yung expenditure assignments. Klaro as in alam mo kung who is responsible, which level or which tier of government level is responsible for the distribution and provision of the services. So right now, well, sabi ni Attorney Buko kanina, we'll have to wait and see how the executive order will come out.
Ayun, sir. So will the EO be able to clarify that now, say what the provinces will have to now perform, municipalities, cities, and maybe barangays?
Yes, the EO, as I mentioned earlier, will have a clear delineation of responsibilities between the national government and the different levels of LGUs, okay? Nakasama ganyan nga yung yung sa amin yung annexes as mentioned earlier, yung Devolution transition plan, okay? So para ma-reduce yung overlap or even duplication of functions, so that we can provide clarity on the functions assigned to all the stakeholders. So specifically, the formulation of the development transition plan is guided by 3 factors, tatlo yan. Una, yung public services with little or no benefit spillover shall be administered by lower level governments, while public services with significant benefit spillover are best assigned to higher levels of government. Now, pangalawa, just to finish, tatlo po ito. Second, the provision of public goods and services that involve economies of scale is best assigned, of course, to higher levels of government. And lastly, functions that are related to the redistributive role of the government should be handled by the national government. And the DBM po naman ay patuloy na gumagabay sa ating mga national government agencies sa pagbubuo ng kanilang development, devolution transition plan, specifically on how NGAs could unbundle or disaggregate their respective functions and PPAs. So the transition plan also will be prepared by the NGAs, and this will be shared with the LGUs para alam din nila kung ano yung ililipat sa kanila.
Okay, sir. So because this is sort of an interagency body that's also working on the transition plan, so the body has already identified the functions that are currently being performed by the NGAs, and then that's going to be then devolved to the LGUs as using the three parameters that you have stated: spillover, scale, economies of scale, and then the redistributive would remain with national government. So aasahan po ng local governments na may listahan na darating sa kanila, sir?
Yes, actually doon sa ating proposed EO, mayroon na tayong mga attachment doon kung ano yung mga i-devolve na functions coming from the national government agencies to transfer sa ating local governments. Oo. So nandun na siya, nakalista na rin po siya, and even from our from our National Budget Memorandum Circular na inisyu namin sa DBM in the preparation of the agency or department's budget, nakasad na rin po doon, may listahan na siya as an Annex A para alam nila kung ano yung mga PAPs that already be assigned to LGUs and be devolved from the national government agencies.
So let me clarify that. When you say you're going to devolve the functions, is it going to be just a category of functions, or is it very, very specific na programs, projects, and activities that are already being performed at the national level?
I think yung mga PPAs, what we call it the program, projects, activities, that is still to be determined ng ating mga department agencies. Although in general, nakalagay na po yung ating mga some sort of functions that will be devolved sa LGUs.
Opo. Sir, let me go to some specifics. Our researchers at CLRG examined the GAA and sort of looking at that as an indicative sort of a document on what national government agencies are currently performing that have local dimensions or are being implemented at the local level. And we looked at some big ticket local projects in departments where there are devolved functions. For example, will the NGAs now stop building farm to market roads because these are largely, bounded within local jurisdictions, or even irrigation or how about projects about yung local infrastructure like local roads, yung provincial, yung mga within the province and not the big highways that are connecting regions. Ano pong maaasahan dyan?
Okay. For that question, yung specific PAPs na yan, at this time, I cannot confirm yet whether these programs of the DA, yung nabanggit mo, yung farm to market roads, the local infrastructure of the public works and highways and other PAPs that you have on your list, di pa namin siya, we cannot still confirm, and this can be, if ever this will be transferred to the LGU, since the final list of the discontinued PAPs will be based on the devolution transition plans, which have yet to be submitted by the concerned agencies or NGAs. So makikita ho doon sa devolution transition plans ng mga ahensya ang mga detalye kung paano i-disaggregate or i-unbundle ang mga government functions, services, facilities na ibibigay sa mga LGUs, consistent with existing relevant laws and based on the experience and assessment of the national government agents. However, let me emphasize that the proposed devolution or discontinuance of PAPs shall be done in a phase implementation or by phase. So
Opo.
yun ang kagandahan naman dito. Hindi naman bibiglain.
Opo. Sir, since parang we're already talking about existing functions and existing PPAs, how will the additional share be treated? Will it be treated as a conditional transfer where national government will be laying down guidelines on how it will be spent, or will this be still subject to the regular LGU process of appropriation? Papasok siya sa general fund and then they will have to choose their own project.
Okay. Itong ano natin kasi, since this is era or what we call now the National Tax Authority, okay, this is considered as an automatic appropriation, just like in the previous year, wherein we release automatically to the local government units and local government units without liens or holding it. So this is automatic siya. So I think we will not, there's no conditionalities here. But of course, we have to encourage for our LGUs that they have, given the fact that they have increased fiscal space or fiscal authority, we're encouraging them, of course, to take on the functions that will be devolved and that they can implement. So yun lang aming caveat dito.
Sir, siguro po, a specific example. Let's say there's an irrigation project that's being now implemented and funded by national government. When the devolution transition plan kicks in, will that project be discontinued and then turned over to the local government, or will that then be finished by national government, and then the function will further function for further PPAs will now then be transferred to local government?
Okay, for that question, yeah, you know, for example, the example you have mentioned, since there are already projects or programs that has been already started by the national government, I think it's incumbent of the national government already to continue that at tapusin yung project, kasi kung hindi, mabibindi naman yung implementation of project. But of course, given that already, as mentioned to you, yung irrigate projects that are identified in the devolved as devolved functions, yes, sila na yung mag-uumpisa. Yung mga umpisahan ng project, they should be the one to implement those projects. Okay.
Opo. Once na na-clarify na po siya na dun sa unbundling, no, from 2022, that's going to be their responsibility na.
Yes.
Okay po. So, sir, I think this is a question for both you, ASEC, and for Director Bonago. Do you think the LGUs would be welcoming that clarification from you now? Kasi parang dati nang may agam-agam sila na parang may additional funding pero baka daw may guidelines. Baka parang ililipat lang daw po yung project to them. So parang hindi nila magagastos yung pera. So yun po yung clarification lang doon, sir, na starting 2022, all the projects under the functions will be new projects and not old projects from national government that will be transferred to them.
Yeah, for that question, syempre alam natin na yung mga projects or programs na yan ay existing na ginagawa na ng ating mga ahensya ngayon. So as mentioned to you, kung hindi naman project yan, I guess, it's time for us to transfer now the PAPs sa ating mga LGUs. Kasi with this increase in their allocation or the national tax allocation, they have, of course, the ability to implement the projects given this increase in their national tax allocation. So I think in particular na programa natin siguro sa mga other health programs, they can take on that because actually naman na-devolve na yun actually sa kanila. It's just a matter of kumbaga some of the functions that's still being implemented by the national governments should now be take on by the local government units.
Opo. So ano po to, yung transition plan would also have a big effect on national government agencies that they have to stop yung mga PPA funding, the PPAs that actually will have to be now performed by the LGUs. I think that's also connected to the content of the EO and the DBCC document.
That's true, ano that?
Opo, sige po.
Yeah, kasi tama ka. Now, based on our issuance, doon sa aming budget call na 2022 or NBM 138, government or agencies are already advised to discontinue the local projects in their agency budgets in the phased approach. Para sa susunod na taon, hindi na nila dapat isama sa kanilang budget proposal ang pondo na para sa mga local projects ng mga LGUs na nabibilang sa first and fourth income classifications, sapagkat inaasahan na mayroon silang sapat na fiscal resources tulad ng Mandanas ruling, as I mentioned to you earlier. On the other hand, inaabisuhan naman namin ang mga government agencies to limit the subsidies to the local government units or local projects of LGUs na nabibilang sa fifth and sixth income classes, lalong-lalo na ang mga LGUs na may mataas na poverty incidence at ang mga LGUs na considered as what they call geographically isolated and depressed areas or GIDAs. So given this, NGAs are expected to provide technical assistance and advisory services to LGUs instead of direct funding support in view of the discontinuance of local projects in a gradual manner.
Ayun, thank you po sir. Kasi yung next question ko is connected to that kasi nakalagay po ito sa documents ng DBCC that the national government agencies now will be focusing on steering rather than rowing. So nabanggit ninyo na yung may technical assistance, yung development of standards and performance measures po siguro yung magiging functions. No? So what can LGUs expect now when parang nagbago ngayon yung magiging relationship na wala na silang aasahan from national government agencies when it comes to local projects, but there will now be this new sort of worldview at the national governments.
Yeah, as mentioned ko nga, that is already answered by that. Na sinabi ko nga sa inyo na para sa susunod na taon, we've done our part in giving instruction to our national government agencies, and of course, advising also, most likely lalabas din yan sa ating local budget memorandum circular, that our agencies are expected to, as I mentioned, provide technical assistance to an advisory service to LGUs. Kasi nga, hindi naman sa ngayon, alam natin that we need to capacitate the local government units given the, of course, the gaps that they have in terms of the funds and at the same time, the technical capability.
Opo. At this point, let me bring in Director Annalisa Bonagua from the DILG. Good afternoon po, ma'am. Ma'am, dun sa rowing rather than steering rather than rowing, ano po magiging role ng DILG dyan? Kasi kayo yung go-between between the national government and the local governments.
Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat. Thank you, Ralph. Maraming salamat for inviting DILG at least to share with your audience the things that DBM, DILG, and all national government agencies are doing in preparation for the implementation of the Supreme Court ruling on the Mandanas and Garcia petition. Una sa lahat, the Supreme Court ruling on the Mandanas and Garcia petitions is kami sa DILG is another milestone in the continuing journey towards genuine local autonomy and empowerment. DILG bilang the oversight agency for local government units. The Supreme Court ruling clarifies, even corrects, the basis for the computation of the LGU's 40% share, that it will not be based not just on the internal revenue internal revenue taxes, but in the national taxes of the national government encompassing both the collection of BIR and the Bureau of Customs, which therefore increases the LGU shares and therefore strengthen fiscal autonomy. So dahil lumaki yung share ng local government units, lalaki yung amount nila from the shares, and we are talking about one pie. Isa lang yan, isa lang national collection lang yan. So it has to come from somewhere. So dahil ganon, it will have to come from the national government agencies' fiscal space, and therefore the funding for the national programs or the PPAs of the national government agencies. So at the very beginning of the Supreme Court ruling, when we started the conversation on the implementation, ang tanong, saan kukunin? So the first thing that I think DBM did was to have an inventory of all the programs of the national government agencies, which somehow encompasses and the devolved services, or encompasses programs that encompasses devolved services of local government units, or programs that still supports the delivery of the devolved services by local government units. Kasi these are the programs that possibly can be, which funding can be taken out and be given to local government units. Kasi dapat, so therefore, kung ganon, the national programs, national PPAs, which encompasses devolved services, will have to scale down kasi less resources na for the national, because it will now become the national tax allotment of local government units, which local government units will have to spend depending on their requirements and their priorities and their needs of their constituents. So yun yung nangyayari. So kaya yung pinag-uusapan na I think that technically, it cannot be called devolution of function. There is no devolution of new functions and services to local government units. What we are scaling down, and hopefully the local governments will scale up naman, are programs of national government in support of the devolved functions. Hindi siya functions, but these are programs in support of devolved functions, which national government will slowly scale down, phased out, because the money is now with local government units. So I think what we are talking about is that we hope that local governments can absorb and continue to implement, not necessarily that program, but continue to absorb the implementation of those projects belonging to the devolved services, because the national agency will have to phase out. So ganun yung nangyayari. So therefore, the national government is now calibrating our attention and focus how we can address this. So less resources for us. So the national government will have to focus on, yung sabi mo nga, steering rather than rowing. So we have to focus our attention on capacitating local government units, providing them the standards and even monitoring, rather than actually carrying out the implementation of these programs which are in support of the devolved services. So that LGUs now, which have more money, will be able to absorb and implement this the way national government are implementing. So I think that's the And yung question more regarding the ILG, of course, the ILG will be in the forefront, considering that we are the link between the national and the local government units. We are the oversight agencies for local governments, and therefore we have to ensure that local government units are prepared to absorb in terms of their organizational capacity, personnel competency, and even technical competency in delivering and upscaling the sectoral programs. So yun yung ginagawa natin ngayon. And these are being done with national government agencies who are currently still implementing the programs, especially the technical ones like infrastructure. So DPWH have to really handhold local governments. Kung hindi pa, no, I think at the provincial level, we have done this, the capacity building in terms of our road projects, yung iba pang mga projects, capacitating the provincial governments in carrying out infrastructure project. But I think for many municipalities, they need hand-holding, and it is where national government should come in and devote the remaining funds that are which will be remaining for them to be spent for capacity building and hand-holding local government instead of implementation. So I think that's the entire scenario right now.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for clarifying. There are two sound bites that are very, very crucial there. No additional devolved functions, and then scaling down and scaling up. Scaling down at the national and scaling up at the local level. Ma'am, ASEC Toledo earlier mentioned that there will be sort of this a distinction between first to fourth income class LGUs and then the lower income class LGUs in terms of how the PPAs will be reassigned. Can that be done through an EO without, say, amending the local government code? Kasi sa code po, di ba, pag sinabing function siya ng municipality, it doesn't say na itong function na to is only for the higher income class, and then this function is only for the lower income class.
Well, that is actually encouraged that the first class to fourth class income classification will be the one to take on those, sabi nga ni Director Ana, that they have to scale up yung kanilang functions is because of this implementation of the Mandanas, wherein they have more fiscal, they have increased fiscal administration, or they have the more fiscal space to take on those programs and projects that now, of course, are being implemented by national government agencies, and will be not exactly transferring, is scaling up their functions of the local government units. Yeah. So, posible yon. As a matter of fact, nakasama na nga sa, even at our end, nakasama doon sa aming National Budget Memorandum Call or National Budget Call under 138, emphasizing that the funds will be, dapat isama sa kanilang budget proposal ang pondo para sa mga local projects sa mga LGUs na nabibilang sa first to fourth class classification, sapagkat inaasahan nga natin na mayroon silang sapat na fiscal resource tulad ng Mandanas.
So is this just a matter of phasing na parang eventually itong mga PPAs na to naman should also be performed by the lower income class? Mauuna lang talagang ibaba sa first to fourth? Ganun ba yun?
Yes, that is what we think. Kasi sa ngayon nga, yung ating mga LGUs na nabibilang sa 5th and 6th class income classes, lalong-lalo na yung mga LGUs na may mataas na poverty incidence at mga LGUs na considered na malayo or depressed areas, yung kakayahan nila, baka yung allocations that will be given to them ay hindi pa sapat doon sa functions na ililipat sa kanila. So, meaning, dapat mabalansin natin yon. Oo.
Director Bonagua, yung po bang mga first to fourth, na level up na ba yung expectation sa kanila?
Well, ganito, no? The LGUs will continue to implement the same devolved function as provided under Section 17 of the Local Government Code. Plus, the other functions given them in the succeeding laws passed by Congress. Kasama dyan yung local disaster risk management functions, I think yung local tourism functions, etc. No, maraming subsequent laws. Although some of these are actually just expansion of what has been already mentioned in the local government code. So yung una, yun, they will be performing the same function that we assume based on our rapid, well, CLRD must also have this rapid assessment. All LGUs are somehow put in place some mechanism in implementing all the line item as provided in Section 17. The extent of implementation, it might vary depending on the capacity of local governments, di ba? So the functions and responsibilities of local government units under the local government codes are given them regardless of the income level, di ba? Because the income has been already factored in the computation of the era where we consider the population and the land area. So it is supposed to be parang address the constituency and the infrastructure requirements of the area, because you have the land area and the population as a factor for so the income classification is, well, they have less resources, but the less resources is just compensates because they have probably less population, smaller land area. So yun yung aming thinking. But nonetheless, we DILG and of course, syempre DBM would like to help pa rin yung ganong mga LGUs na maliliit, no? Maybe in view of their circumstances as well, kasi mas mataas ang poverty level, they have less capacity to generate revenues kasi they are very much rural area. So kahit na anong revenue mobilization effort mo dyan, wala ka namang taxes na ma-exact in that area. So yun yung dapat i-consider, yung capacity nila to generate revenue and the capacity to address the needs of the population. Kahit konti lang yan, kung really very depressed area, very rural, napakalayo, etc. So, ano nga ang question? So yun, doon sa
kung na-level off na po sa kanila.
Doon sa phasing of devolution, tulad ng sinabi ni Director Asik Toledo, when we requested, well, it's actually DBM has parang instructed the agencies to face the devolution. They should take into consideration the capacities of local government. So when they scale down, in some areas, syempre una mong scale down yung has the capacity. So parang itong mga cities pwede na they can be on their own. But the less resource local governments, maybe less capacitated, kailangan i-handhold pa for the next 2 or 3 years until the phasing of devolution. In terms of yung nag-level up kami, itong ganitong discussion with the LGUs, medyo hindi pa kasi we do not take them by income class, but we have to orient them regarding their responsibilities and roles as provided by law, local government code, and the succeeding laws, that even by this time, they should already have somehow prepared or been delivering those services. The increased amount will enable them to expand and improve the services that they are providing their constituent along those devolved services. And the national programs that has been currently implemented after 30 years of devolution are complementing the delivery of services of local government. So if the national government has to pull out, scale down, the LGUs must be ready now to take on and take full responsibilities of these services kasi medyo mag-pull out na si national government kasi wala na siyang resources. So yun naman that's the way we're explaining this to local government units.
Okay po. Let me go back to Asek Toledo, sir. Nung February 17, sa Business World article, nabanggit po ni DBM Undersecretary Laura Pascua, kung nakikinig po si Yusek, hello po. She was quoted saying that the draft EO submitted to the President intends to devolve around 295 billion pesos worth of local projects to LGUs this 2022. Nung nag-compute po kami, that's about 61 billion more from the estimated total of additional revenues arising from the Mandanas ruling. Can you clarify that? Kasi parang kung yung additional parang kulang pa siya if yung computation na sinabi is 61 billion pesos na may shortfall.
All right, Paeng. Yes, nabanggit nga yan ni Yusek Paso as you mentioned. Yeah, dahil sa inaasahang na pagtigil ng ilang mga programs or projects or activities ng mga ahensya, kung saan ang implementasyon ng mga ito ay dapat na ipagpatuloy ng mga LGUs gamit ng kanilang NTA or National Tax Allotment, we expect that the 295 billion will be freed up from the agency budgets and will be added to the available fiscal space of the national government. However, we would like to emphasize that the discontinuance of the PPA will be done in a phased manner nga, as I've mentioned already. Depende sa available resources at kapasidad ng ating mga LGUs. Now, on the other hand, based on the latest computation by the DUF, the collected national taxes back in 2019, may tinatayang 239 billion increase na matatanggap ng mga LGUs under the fiscal year 2022 budget. Ito ay dating 230 billion nga yan na nabanggit nga ni Yusek Pascua when she was asked by the Business World reporters. Now, this is equivalent to 27.66% increase in their national tax allotment share relative to what they will be getting without the Supreme Court Mandanas ruling. bukod pa rito, ang 2022 NTA shares ay tinatayang 56%, more than the 2021 era. Kung ikukumpara mo ang mga nakaraang taon from fiscal years 2018, 19, 20 up to 2021, ang average annual increase ng era ay nasa 10% lamang. So hence, on January 1, 2022, LGUs will be receiving a significant increase in their NTA na maaari nilang gamitin upang pondohan ang kanilang mga priority investment needs. Unlike in 1992, when the local government code became effective, no personnel or projects will be downloaded by the NG or the national government. So yun. That's the context nung nabanggit ni Yusek Pasco yan.
Sir, yeah. I'm going to bring in a question that's supposed to be coming on later, but I think it's germane to your point na sabi niyo nandun pa yung 200 plus billion from 2019. Alam naman natin that we are undergoing some financial stress or fiscal stress because of the pandemic. Nandyan pa po ba yung pera na yan na i-release sa 2022 or are we facing a cash flow problem pagdating dun sa pagre-release niyan sa 2022?
Yung ating ERA or NTA is based on previous year's collection. Okay? This time, itong 2022, based on the 2019 collection natin. So, mean to say, i-program natin ito based on what is the collection in the previous 3 years. So, yun yan. So, ganun yung ating pag-release or pag-compute ng ating NTA.
So, may pera pa, sir. Nandiyan naman yung pera.
Ganito yan. Yung pera sinasabi ko nandyan ay po yan, pinoprograma ng ating national government, especially the Bureau of the Treasury, DBM, or the DBCC. Pinoprograma po natin yung ating, one is yung ating paggastos but based on the projection of income from the previous year. Halimbawa, kung ano projection na makukolekta natin doon sa 2022, may projection po tayo. But of course, yung era natin, ang basihan po niyan is from previous year. Kaya kung ano man yung mga collection natin last year, i-base doon, yun nga ipoprograma natin na gastusin for 2022 para sa era or para sa ating national tax allocation. Allotment.
So yung 2022 po, ang base niya would start in 2019. So the following year po, which is 2023, nakita rin namin sa DBCC documents na parang magiging short-lived yung increase nung revenues na maaasahan ng local governments kasi sa 2020 na magiging part na siya ng computation for 2023, mababa ang revenue kasi nga po nag-lockdown, may economic slowdown. Tama po ba na yung expectation na yun ay maipa-communicate din natin sa LGU na baka yung susunod na taon sa 2023 ay hindi naman ganun kataas yung madadagdag? Baka mabawasan pa yung matatanggap nila.
Given yung projected revenue collection for given this pandemic, 2020, last year, and sabi nga natin 3 years ang basihan ng ating NTA or ERA. So given that yung ating fiscal, yung ating basihan nga ng ating releases for ERA is 3 years prior. So ibig sabihin, there's expected na bababa yung ating national tax allotment compared of course sa 2022. But I think hindi naman siguro bababa yan compared to the level of previous 3 years. But I think bababa siya compared of course to the 2022 tax national NTA, yes. Given of course the allocation or the projected revenue or the actual revenue collection of 2020.
Thank you, sir. Sir, we also looked into the DBCC documents and we noted that you were exploring several options before. And especially yung nandun sa sa local government code, pwede ring i-withhold yung part of the ERA because of an unmanageable fiscal deficit. Now that, medyo nahihirapan talaga ang government sa financing ng response to the pandemic and other government projects, is that becoming a much more tempting option now, or is that out of the picture?
Now, as you have mentioned, nakita mo, so the DBCC in 2018 thought about 3 possible measures to mitigate the impact of the Supreme Court ruling. Even then, before tinitingnan namin kung anong magiging impact nito. Isa dito ang pag-amend ng Section 284 of the Local Government Code, wherein the 40% shares of LGUs in the National Internal Revenue taxes is being proposed to be reduced to 30%. However, amending this LGC may take some time and may not be passed before the implementation of the Supreme Court ruling, as this will involve congressional action.
Yes.
Okay. Ikalawa, ikinukonsidera na namin yung pagdideklara ng unmanageable fiscal deficit upang may mapasa 30% again ang shares ng LGUs sa national taxes alinsunod doon sa local government code. But this will also take time since we need to consult with the heads of the Congress and the leagues. Okay? The last measure is to fully devolve functions and services to the LGUs by discontinuing the finance to finance the local PPAs or programs, projects, and activities stipulated under the local government code, other existing laws, but are still large under different national government agency budgets. Dahil nga sa inaasahan natin ang pagtaas ng shares ng natatanggap ng ating mga LGUs, ihikayat natin na ipagpatuloy ang mga local na ng pamahalaan or LGUs ang pagpapatupad ng mga devolved functions to ensure that smooth implementation of functions, basic services, and facilities. Now, after careful deliberation by the Interagency Technical Working Group on Devolution, the third measure is being resorted in order to sustain the manageable public sector deficit. So this will also increase the fiscal space left to the national government for the major national programs and projects, especially those that will support the recovery of our health and social sector. So LGUs will likewise benefit from this measure since they will have more fiscal space and flexibility to implement their priority programs and projects by 2022 and beyond. So, yun yung doon. Sagot natin dyan.
Okay po, sir. The discussion on having a phased approach for the first to fourth class municipalities or LGUs and the fifth to sixth class is actually hinting on what is also included in many of the DBM's presentations about having an equalization program. Meron na pong bang mas detalyadong concept yung inyong pinopropose na equalization program to handle the horizontal imbalances among the LGUs?
Wait. As far as the growth equalization program, that is something to be part of the executive order. This will be established to address the problems of marginalization, unequal development, and high poverty incidents across different LGUs. So the necessary amount for this shall be included in the DBM in the fiscal year 2022 NEP. This will cover the funding requirements of DAPs of poor, disadvantaged, and lagging LGUs to assess them in the full and efficient implementation of the devolved function service. So, sa ngayon, the GF shall be released, well, as other funds should be released to LGUs in accordance with the implementing rules and regulations prescribed by the DPCC. So sa ngayon, we still have to determine that. That is part of the discussion as far as the DBCC is concerned.
Okay po. Let me bring in Director Bonagua. Also regarding the equalization program, ma'am. For those of us who have sort of been chronologically advanced pagdating sa devolution, you may experience that, may konting memory of what happened during the birth pangs of devolution after 1992. Medyo allergic po ang local governments sa term na equalization. Ano ang inyong kasi meron pong another Mandanas ruling, di ba, that struck down the LGSEF ba tawag dun, sir? Ma'am, dun sa around the year 2000 na kaya parang pag minimension yung equalization program, parang allergic yung mga LGU dyan. Ano po ang inyong sense dyan, Ma'am Ana?
Well, itong equalization growth equalization fund that DBM in coordination with us oversight agencies, DBM, DILG, NEDA, and DOF, that is conceptualizing is hope to address the issues on marginalization, unequal development, high poverty incidence, and disparities in net fiscal capacities of local government units. And that the GEF should cater to LGUs needing assistance to enable them to somehow, this is very ideal, to provide comparable levels of services. Parang yung services na na-experience mo kay Makati, dapat na-experience mo rin kay Lanao del Norte, kay UP, Maguindanao. So, ganon yung intention, no? Unlike yung LGSF,
LGSEF.
LGSEF, yung LGSF, Local Government Service Equalization
Fund.
That was, kailan nga po ito?
That was 2000, panahon ni
ERAP time, I think ERAP time.
Yes, no? Ma'am. Yes,
that was a portion of the era which was set aside. Tapos, dinistribute to local government units on a different formula, no? Hindi naman ganon yung iisip na growth equalization. It's a top up to the national tax allotment that will be given to local government units. So walang kinukuha, walang kinakaltas from the era or the nata of the local governments. This is an additional grant. This is parang to replace the existing, kasi mapupull out ng national government. Let's say, for example, the ILC, we have the conditional matching grant for provinces. This is a separate fund under the LGSF, Local Government and Enhancement Fund. Tama po ba, ASEC? Ito yung fund facility na kung saan nilalagay ng DBM ang mga proyekto na dapat ini-implement ng local government units with the assistance of the national government agencies. Pero hindi na dumadaan sa budget ng national agencies like for the ILG. Yung tulad ng BUB before. So ito yung ina-access ng local governments to support kung saan sila weak and needing assistance. So ito kasi parang they are thinking that this will be pulled out. This is part of the list na sinasabi nyo na listahan ng mga projects that may possibly be unfunded by 2022. So to replace that, this is now the growth equalization fund that we are conceptualizing and thinking about. So at this time, the mechanics are currently being thought of, the concept, the instrument to prioritize, and also the data from which to benchmark the intervention or the tool. Pinag-aaralan pa lahat yan, ginagather pa lahat ng information. So
Ma'am, BLGD is working on the sort of the minimum amount of services na yung standard na dapat ma-receive ng isang citizen.
I think DBM is leading this. We are participating in the discussion on how to formulate the concept and the mechanics for the growth equalization fund. And I think dito ngayon, habang kung may mga very nice idea na gusto nating makapture, it is the right time for us to submit the recommendation and suggestion on how to formulate the growth equalization fund. Siyempre, we will take into consideration some of our experiences when we implement the BUB, the LGSF, ano pa ba yung mga similar grants, yung mga ganon. So, hindi siya part of the era. This is a top-up grant. Pwede nating sabihin conditional grant, top-up grant to local government units on top of what they are with that what they will be receiving as ERA or as NATA, National Tax.
Okay po. Thank you po for those clarifications. Let me proceed po. Parang question to sa inyong dalawa na po. So parang fast talk na lang with Tito Boy Abunda. Kasi may mga participants who sent their questions ahead of time. And we would like to ask you this questions na po. So can national agencies still include support to LGUs in their annual budget? So kahit sino po sa inyong dalawa, Asek Rolly or si Ma'am Ana po. Can national agencies still include support to LGUs?
Si Asek Rolly.
Sige. Mauna na ako.
Yes,
The answer to that question is yes and no. Now, under Section 2.7 ng National Budget Call for 2022 or the NBM 138, NGAs were advised, as I mentioned, to refrain from including in their budget proposal funding for devolved local projects belonging to the richest and most capable LGUs and limit subsidies to local projects belonging to the poorest and at least capable areas. Now, in any case, the NGAs deem it necessary to retain certain TAPs which should already be discontinued. The NGA should provide a strong justification, including a detailed strategy on how the department plans to fully devolve said functions and services to the LGUs at the soonest possible time. So yeah, that's my answer. I don't know if Director Ana still have something to add on that.
Yes, sir. Tama po yung sabi ni Asek Rolly. Yes or no? Yes and no. No in the implementation of the devolved services. But yes, kami, campaign namin, maraming yes for capacity building, providing capacity building interventions for local government units. Kasi that will still be part of their PPAs. And that will still be funded. Ang iniiba lang natin, the nature of the assistance to local government. Instead of them implementing in support of local government, it should be capacitating local government to enable them to implement and absorb what they have been implementing, what the national agencies have been doing before.
Okay po. Second question po. This is asked by two people, Mr. Espinelli from Cavite City and Mr. De La Cruz from Dingras, Ilocos Norte. Will national government personnel be transferred to LGUs or may be declared redundant?
Okay. One of the key components of the Devolution transition plan to be prepared by NGA's concern is an organizational effectiveness proposal. So dito, nakasaad ang mga proposed changes sa organizational structure, staffing complement, at resource allocation ng mga ahensya dahil sa full devolution. For example, the DTI plans to focus on innovation and helping industries with this. So the DA is looking towards clustering farms and promoting the diversification of agriculture based on the spatial analysis of commodity production. Now, we may know that these proposed changes in the organizational structure and staffing complement by the NGAs shall be evaluated by the DBM pursuant to the existing laws, rules, and regulation.
Okay po. Third question po, asked by three people. From Acting Committee Secretary Cacho of the House of Representatives, from a UPLB researcher, Ms. Mahena, and Mr. Ocol from the National Tax Research Center. Has the national government done an assessment of LGU readiness for taking on additional functions? I guess this is a question for Ma'am Ana. Meron na po ba kayong assessment? Who's ready and who's not?
Readiness, well, as we have been mentioning earlier, no, wala namang new function that has to be devolved. So kung merong assessment of readiness, it should have been done during the 1990s, before the Big Bang Devolution in 1980s. No, what is happening right now, based on the Supreme Court ruling, is just fiscal devolution. So fiscal devolution, kasi nilakihan lang yung pie. There is no changes in the functions devolved to local government units. So yung what is the question?
Meron daw po ba kayong nagawang assessment? Who's ready and who's not?
Okay, so Assessment, well, I think the assessment that has been done so far today is the absorptive capacity of local government units or the impact of the devolution.
Yes,
There
ma'am.
has been a lot of studies along the sector of health and I think agriculture. Wala man entirely yung isang kabuuan, but then there are some recommendations. That's the reason why may mga lumalabas na policy recommendation along health and agriculture and some other sectors. But then I think kasi these are already devolved. Ang dapat tingnan siguro yung absorptive capacity and the performance level of local governments. Kami sa DILG, we have the seal of good local governance, which we do not parang assume naman that is encompassing of all the assessment of the performance of local government units, but somehow this provides us a picture on how local governments are able to comply with the requirements under the law, under the local government code. And then, so therefore, what happens is that the aside from rewarding those who pass, the result of the seal of good local governance becomes an instrument and an input to national government agency, particularly sa amin sa DILG, to focus the attention, the capacity building intervention to the weak areas of local government and to which local government are needing this assistance. So yun ang sad to say wala talagang comprehensive assessment kasi iba-iba siya by sector. There has been enough assessment for some critical sectors such as health and agriculture, and wherein some of the recommendations are coming from may mga recommendations for renationalization, etc.
Okay, last fast talk question. Won't the increased share expand and perpetuate era dependency? I mean, I don't think it's era dependency. Sabihin na, NPA dependency. Sino po ang gustong sumagot?
Well, siguro ako na magsimula. Well, as it is right now, even without the Supreme Court ruling, our provinces and cities are already 81% dependent on the era. And the cities are, let's say, medyo 49% dependent. So 51% yung kanilang capacity to generate local revenue. So they are already dependent. And therefore, increase in NATA will increase the dependency. And we're seeing in some of our simulation, it's around from current 81% to around 85%. That is the reason, that is considering if local government units will not increase their capacity and their activities to generate local revenues. That's the reason why the LGU Devolution Transition Plan, they are encouraged to put in place some mechanism approaches in order to generate revenues, local revenues, so that they can match the increase in the national allotment.
Okay, yes, sir.
In addition, tama si Director Ana. Even before the implementation of the Supreme Court ruling, that's been common notion that a lot of the LGUs are dependent on ERA. So the response from the oversight agencies, particularly the DOF and the PILG, is the continuous effort to advocate the strengthening of the LGUs, na-mention kanina rin, own revenue generating measures, or even the borrowing from the government financial institution, and even entering the public-private partnership and joint ventures with the private sector. Now, with the incoming increase in fiscal resources, it is therefore crucial for us that the national government agencies to capacitate the LGUs in this particular area. So, nais lang namin na matulungan ang ating mga LGUs sa pagmamanage ng kanilang financial resources, especially on how this can sustainably finance the devolved services over time, and on how to translate this into a quality delivery of goods and services and facilities to their constituents. So, kaya nga yung ating EO emphasizes the importance of supporting the capacity development of our LGUs. Specifically under the proposed EO, yung ating DOF, DLGF through the Philippine Tax Academy will be conducting capacity building programs on revenue generation and fiscal management to enable the LGUs to fund the devolved services on their own. Now, gayon pa man, even without the EO, patuloy na magbibigay ng technical assistance ang DBM, DILG at DOF sa ating mga LGUs on areas involving public financial management such as local planning, also investment planning, resource mobilization, and budgeting. So yun yung mga ano natin as far as the national government is concerned.
Sir, ma'am, I'm picking a question from the chat box na gagawin kong fast talk question. Will the regulatory powers of national agencies be devolved to LGUs?
Ako ba? Well,
Sige, ma'am.
sa sinagot na namin, wala namang new devolution. So no new even regulatory or service delivery function will have to be devolved to local. It has to be associated, or it has to be authorized by a law to develop a new function.
Okay po. Siguro po, last question na lang po kay Director Bonagua. This question is tied to the DILG as the President's alter ego in exercising general supervision over LGUs. But there are some camps who think that the other national agencies have bypassed the DILG and exercised supervision over LGUs through the PPAs that are now going to be devolved. So how is LGU looking into this more integrative role, not only amongst LGUs, but also maybe among national government agencies who are going to deal with local governments in this new, yung sabi ni Asik Rolly na parang magbabago lang yung nature ng assistance, kumbaga.
Well, bypass, no? The ILG do not have the sole authority to oversee local government units, though we are given the delegated power to oversee local government units by the president. But we do not have the sole authority to oversee local government units, particularly in the sectoral concerns, agriculture, health, etc. So I think at this point, the ILG has been encouraging local government units to provide more capacity building directly. They don't have, actually, may misconception, no? They don't have to go through the ILG to go to the local government units, even with the devolved and decentralized setup that we have. No, the national agencies and the sectoral agencies can go directly, provide guidance and provide capacity building, and even monitor the performance of our local government units. Kasi that will also reflect the performance of the agency on that particular sector. If they are providing enough attention, capacity building to local governments, they will be having better outcomes on a particular sector like agriculture, health, etc. So, yun, no? We in the ILG are encouraging, kasi kami masyado na kaming napupuno ng lahat ng activities that has passed through us to implement at the local level. But it doesn't have to be the case. The NGAs can still directly go through the local government units, providing assistance, giving guidance, and even monitoring performance. Kung may problema sila, siguro pwede silang dumaan and ask the support of the ILG so that we can facilitate their concerns. But wala pong monopoly and authority, monopoly ang DILG in overseeing local governments.
Okay po, at this point, I'd like to go to the open forum. I'd like to bring in my colleague, Mr. Prejan Prieto, who's going to help me collate the questions for the open forum. Good afternoon, Sir Prej. Do you have a question from the audience now?
Yes, good afternoon, Sir Ralph. Thank you very much for boarding me in this very interesting discussions. I've really been hooked on following the discussions since we started. And I'm sure that our audience are also equally interested with these discussions. And this interest is basically reflected in the questions that we have for this open forum. And as mentioned prior, we have some advanced questions that were sent by the participants during the registration. And one of these questions, let me shoot the first one, is in relation to the COVID-19 response. As we know, we are now doing programs, activities relative to COVID-19 response, but at the same time, we cannot really ditch out the other functions of the government, particularly this is a milestone policy. So the question is coming from a student from Pasay City, Ms. Gabrielle Salazar, and it goes, how is the preparation for and the actual implementation of the Mandanas ruling affecting the government's COVID-19 response and vice versa? So anyone po can answer the question?
Okay. That one? Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. mauna na ako before Director Ana. Yeah, the Supreme Court Mandanas ruling has presented the national government with a unique opportunity for us to fully hand over the responsibility to local governments, the provision of basic services which have been devolved to them. At dahil dito, yung national government agencies natin will be able to shift its focus to addressing the urgent and strategic challenges that the country is currently facing. So the national government can now center its attention on one, strengthening the healthcare sector for resiliency to fight COVID-19 and other contagious diseases. Number two is reviving the economy due to the pandemic. Number three, climate change and disaster management. And number four, the promotion of innovation to cope with the changes under the fourth industrial revolution, among others. Bukod dito, dahil sa additional funds na nilalagay natin, may bibigay natin sa mga LGUs, ito rin ay naging isang malaking oportunidad para sa mga LGUs, since LGUs can now take more active role in providing specific and targeted interventions to address the current challenges affecting their respective localities and constituencies due to COVID-19 pandemic. So yun yung aking response to that.
Sige po, follow up na lang po siguro, Asek Toledo. There's a question from Director Novel Bangsal, specifically to you, since the 40% of the NTA will be allocated for LGU shares, and this is an automatic appropriation, as we discussed earlier. Do you agree that this will further increase our borrowing requirement and increase debt to GDP ratio to more than 60%?
Debt to GDP ratio. Yung ating projection as to how much we're going to fund for the 2022 era or NTA as already projected na doon sa ating fiscal program. Nakasama na siya sa fiscal program natin. So to answer your question as to patataas pa ba yung ating debt to GDP ratio, I think based on the program natin dito sa ating for 2022, nakasama na siya dyan. Pero of course, ang ating programa as far as fiscal program is concerned is still ayon sa ating DBCC at nag-usap-usap na ang DBCC natin, ay siyempre patuloy tayong titignan at yung ating debt to GDP ratio. So nevertheless, the country's debt situation remains manageable. So in fact nga, our debt to GDP ratio at the end of 2019 was it's as low as at 39% of GDP. This is estimated about 53% at the end of 2020, projected to rise of 57% by 2021, and 59% by the end of 2022. So this projection is still below the below 60% recommended safe threshold level. So yun yung ating dito. So meanwhile, as mentioned, sabi ko nga yung ating national tax allotment, which is projected at 213 requirements to be implemented for 2022, has already been factored in our deficit program for 2022 na na-approve na ng DBCC.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Sir Prej,
yes,
questions?
Still coming from Executive Director Bangsal, who I think is tuning with us via our YouTube channel. Para kay Sir Rolly pa rin yung question, have we already estimated potential cost to personal services in light of possible movement of national government personnel, early retirement, and etc. due to the full devolution?
Di ba nabanggit ko rin kanina, katulad na hindi katulad nung 2019 1991, we first implemented the devolution as far as the local government score is concerned. This time naman kasi, wala naman tayong sinasabing ito-transfer ng personnel coming from the national government agencies. Ang ating nakaprovide din sa ating mga proposed EO is an option ng ating mga affected national government agencies to have one is to retire if they will be affected, at pangalawa, and if they decide to once the functions has been transferred to LGUs, they have the option also to apply for it doon sa kung saang i-transfer yung function na yon.
Thank you, Sir
Okay
Ronnie.
po. I think I have a question for Director Bonagua. This is a question from Mr. Dudley Romero from Palayan City, the LGU of Palayan City. How will be the monitoring or what will be the monitoring mechanism of the national government with regard to the implementation of the devolution of functions? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, thank you, Ralph. Well, that is the reason why we are requesting we are requiring the local government units to prepare their devolution transition plan so that we can monitor how the phasing of their assumption or full absorption of the devolved functions or the functions that they are supposed to implement, and how they are faring in terms of, kasi may increase yan, no? Whether hindi kasi, for example, medyo wala kasing one-to-one correspondent. For example, the programs of national government agencies, hindi naman lahat ng local governments are targeted or piloted in those programs. So may mga LGUs that might be left na wala naman talaga silang dapat i-absorb na programa from the national government in support of the devolved services. So the expectation is that they have to really scale up the use of their resources so that they can fully implement this devolved function. Wala na silang dapat, hindi naman wala namang dapat asam, but they should not hang on to the support of the national government on this because the money or the resources are already with them. So yun yung nakikita namin. So we are already parang prepping and asking the local government units to look into your organizational structure, the competency requirements of your personnel, develop your capacity development agenda, and also the resource mobilization mechanism in order to still increase their local revenues. And all these things have to be informed or to be shared with national government. So national government can figure out the kind and support and assistance that they will have to provide for a specific local government unit.
Okay, Sir Fred? Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Added ko lang yun sa I saw already kasi kanina tinignan ko yung what exactly the proposed provision of the EO as far as the affected employees, no? So there's a section on what's the option of the personnel who will be affected by the devolution efforts. What they can do, this is the option: transfer to other units, offices within the department or GOCCs or agencies concerned without reduction in pay. Yan. Pangalawa is transfer to agencies in the executive branch without reduction also in pay. And the other option is to avail of retirement benefits and separation incentives, as also there's a provision here also. And they can apply to a vacant position that shall perform the devolved functions and the LGUs concerned. Provided, however, that their re-employment shall be considered as the new entry to the civil service. And provided further, they shall be subject to compensation system of the LGU concerned. So just to give you the picture as far as the affected employees for this devolution efforts.
And
Okay. Yes.
May
Yes,
I just add on to that? Just to allay the fears of the many government personnel, unlike the 1991 devolution that the transfer is mandatory. Ngayon, there will be no automatic transfer of national personnel to local government units, nor involuntary separation from office. So they are assured of that.
Yeah.
I can particularly, binasa na ni Asek Toledo, it's particularly stated in the EO that there will be no automatic transfer to local government units, nor involuntary separation from office of national government personnel.
In relation to that po, no, kasi although we allay the fears of our government officials. But another issue that arises related to that concern is yung mga job orders daw natin na napakarami sa government. How about them?
Asik, Rolly. Well, ako ang sagot ko dyan. Job order, no? Just pardon for job orders. They are there to support government operation on a project basis. So if the projects terminates, alam naman nila yon that they probably they will have to. And so yun yung ano.
Asek Toledo po?
Yes. Baka kasi merong something on the humanitarian side of that.
Well, I think sa government as much as possible, yun nakalagay din naman. We try to find them parang work in other offices or in other yun kahit na hindi kasi itong nakalagay sa provision of EO, this refers to organic personnel of the NGAs, but for job order I think they can be treated the same way as long as there are openings and they are qualified to those positions and projects that they may transfer later on.
Yeah, you're right there, Anna. This will be treated just the same as we are treating them right now. But anyway, the DBM, DLG, and the C shall develop and issue guidelines as far as this is concerned. So I think we really have to look at that also when we issue this EO. Kasama din sa guidelines na i-issue ay related to in terms of the person affected, may it be contractual, regular, and even job orders, I guess.
Okay, I have a question from Cebu, from Mr. Neil Menjares. The PPAs that are regional in scope, sir, projects that may span, say, across provinces, will these be devolved to LGUs as well? Or if yes, who will coordinate and monitor? And if no, kayo na po mag-explain.
Okay. No, the PPAs that are inter-regional or inter-jurisdictional in scope or span across more than LGU shall be retained with the national government. This is because services with significant inter-jurisdictional externalities or benefits and cost spillovers are best assigned to higher levels of government, including the provisions of public goods and services that involve economies of scale. Yeah, na-mention ko rin yun kanina.
Yes, sir. Thank you po. Sir Predge, any questions? Parang umuusok na yata yung chat box.
Yes, actually, no, ito isang, of course, importante sa mga local governments natin, no, yung participation nila in the process. No? We have been mentioning about the preparation of the transition devolution plans. And here comes the question coming from Sir James Francis Miradora, no? How exactly were or are LGUs being consulted in the formulation of the devolution transition plans?
Asek, let's see. Baka, okay. Dr. Anna, or?
Yes, sir. Asek, well, sa local government units, we have started the conversation or the consultation regarding even just the content of the devolution transition plan, what should be there in order for them to prepare for the increase in the shares in by 2022. So right now we are developing the guidelines, and as I've mentioned earlier, the guidelines we just have the framework, but not the exact process. But we're thinking of having 4 components, major components of the LGU devolution transition plans. The first one is an inventory of the services that the LGUs are implementing vis-a-vis the requirements under the law, the local government code, and other laws passed after the local government code, mandating functions and services to be implemented by local government units. Second, a review of their internal capacity, organizational structure, and manpower competency in order to absorb and carry out the devolved function. And then third is the capacity of the organization and the the personnel. So they have to develop their capacity development agenda that they themselves have to implement, or they can ask assistance of national government agencies, sectoral, or from DILG, whether kung fundamental capacity ang kailangan nila, planning, revenue mobilization, budgeting, so they can ask the oversight agency, NEDA, DBM, DILG, and DOF for this. But kung sectoral, we will endorse them or link them to the appropriate sectoral national government agencies. And then the last is the last one is their revenue mobilization mechanism to at least balance out the increase in the NTA with the revenues that they will be collecting. Kasi some of the revenue mobilization activities also requires resources. Since they will have increased resources, probably they can allot a portion of that in let's say, for example, updating their schedule of market value, which requires some funds to carry out. So yun yung ano. And we have I think we have done 2 consultations in this regard, though we have not issued the guidelines, because of course we have to await for the EO before we can finally issue the specific guidelines for the LGU devolution transition plans. And in the course of our discussion on the LGU transition plans, there are questions whether will they have to wait for the national agency transition plans because they are awaiting ano ba yung ibababa sa amin. So those are most of the questions. Nandun yung apprehension. But we have been saying that what the national agency will be given or will be parang transferring will just be projects on the devolved services that they are already implementing. So these are just value-adding projects. So whether the national agency are already ready to give them, they should already know and prepare for the implementation or carrying out their devolved functions.
Thank you.
Just to add on that.
Yes, sir.
Okay, just to add on that, actually, based on principles of inclusivity, transparency, and participatory, and even responsive accountability, actually itong ginagawa nating devolution transition plan has been discussed with the LGUs concerned and even the national government, and this is also a continuing one. As a matter of fact, we have already conducted at least or engaged around 343 LGUs, 13 provinces, 24 cities, and 306 municipalities concerned, with the participation of the local authorities of the Philippines to gather their comments, inputs on the matter. So there's really consultations done as far as this plan is concerned, just to let you know.
Thank you, sir. So
Okay,
one more
Sir
question
French.
coming from the, yes, sir. One more question coming from the pre-registration questions. No, I think this series of questions asked by 2 of our participants is coming from the lens of quote-unquote doubts and reservations. No? Kasi ito yung tanong po nila, no? Considering the current situation and the level of readiness of both national government and LGUs, will the SC ruling on the Mandanas petition be carried out in 2022 as planned? Can the implementation of the ruling still be deferred, or is this still a viable, feasible option? The questions are coming from Sheena Joaquin and Lucia Facultad.
Ladies first, or what?
Sir, well, this has been part of the discussion, sir, with you, Sec Laura. Well, I think it's a decision of the man, but I think based on a consultation agreement between the national government and the local government units on the implementation of the Supreme Court ruling, it has been decided that it will be implemented 2022. So, but however, we are awaiting for the guidelines on to implement. But the ruling is a ruling already. It's in effect. Actually, it's a law in effect, no. So, ang thinking namin, well, these are insider conversation. Whether with the EO or not, I think it is bound to be implemented. Magwawala na ang ating local government units, and it's already a Supreme Court ruling which in effect changes some provisions of the law. In effect, it's already a law in itself. So yun, and in the Supreme Court ruling, it also mandates concerned national agencies to implement, to release to local government units without any lien their shares from the national tax allotment or from.
All right. Just to add, because the decision of the Supreme Court is became already a final and executory, and ordered this, of course, the national government, particularly the Secretary of Finance, Budget and Management, Commission of Internal Revenue and Customs, and the National Treasury to include the collection of taxes in the computation of the this shares of the local government units according to the ratio provided by the local government code starting fiscal year 2022. So it's really a decision already that, of course, we have to follow to implement this as far as this Mandanas ruling of the Supreme Court is concerned.
Okay po. Asek Toledo, there's a question from the chat box that requested na itanong daw to anonymously yung question. It's about ano daw pong mangyayari dun sa mga projects identified by the national legislators, which are, diba, they are lodged in national agencies but implemented locally. Ano pong mangyayari dun? Will that still be allowed or?
Yung mga, what do you mean yung ilalagay sa mga national government agencies? Okay. As far as the identify programs and projects of the Congress or yung congressional district, that will pass through syempre an evaluation and analysis kasi meron tayong tinatawag na Regional Development Council. At doon din dadaan yung proseso na pag-verify or assess and even evaluate the viability of the projects and programs sa ating RDC process. And if that will pass through the approval of the RDC, it will of course include it in their proposal, and that will be submitted again to the agencies or department energy agencies. And that will be subject, of course, by the evaluation of the agencies, and then that will be submitted again to the Department of Budget and Management as part of their budget proposal. And I think even dun sa local siguro din, at the local level, that is also to be considered by the local development councils na kung saan kung saan yung concerned LGUs on that particular coverage ng ating congressional district.
Okay po. Sir Preg, meron ka ba bang questions?
I think this will be the last question. This is related to kasi syempre we have the idea na kapag mas maraming resources, we will be able to exert more projects. No? So is this corollary to performance daw? No? So ang tanong is, with the increased era, which now called the national tax allocation, can we expect improved LGU performance? And this is in particular, question is in terms of disaster risk reduction and management. The question is coming from Ms. Cheryl Leal of Quezon City.
Maybe I'll go first. Syempre, lagi namin sinasabi, with increased resources, you're expected to have better performance. Our local government units are expected to better, expanded, and more responsive delivery of services to their constituency. And that includes disaster risk reduction. Ang implication nito, hindi ko lang sure kung ano yung base, but the 5% allocation for DRR will also increase kasi lalaki yung iyong ERA, lalaki yung total local government budget. So therefore, the amount that they will be able to allocate for disaster risk reduction and preparedness will also increase. And aside from that, hindi lang naman naka-limit dun sa 5%. The LGUs can also have some other programs and projects to address disaster-related concerns, including COVID-19 response in the regular programs other than that of the 5% disaster risk reduction and calamity fund and management fund. So of course, we will be expecting, and we've been telling that to local government units, so we'll be expecting better performance from our local governments.
Okay po, last na question because it's related to that, yung performance, ma'am. Sabi po ni Mr. Benjamin Florencio, is there any sanction to any LGU who will not implement the projects that are being devolved? Or parang kung sabihin na natin, will LGUs have a chance, say, opt out or whatever? Sabihin nila, hindi namin kaya yan. May sanction ba ma'am doon, if ever?
Well, there will be no sanction, of course, unless they failed to deliver the services that they are supposed to deliver under the law. Pero yung accepting a program, pwede naman pag-usapan, pero walang sanction. I think kung hindi talaga kaya i-absorb, let's say for example, maybe probably the one you're pointing out earlier that let's say for example the DPWH road projects, which will eventually scale down, and these are the LGUs are actually parang depending on the DPWH to do their road programs for them. So if this scaled down, they are saying that we cannot do it immediately. Parang capacity building and organizational capacity building takes some time. So wag nyo kami iwanan immediately sa ere. So yun yung sinasabi natin. So definitely there will be no sanction for not absorbing or not accepting a national program.
Okay po.
That will reflect in their performance.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, so that's the last question for the open forum. I would just like to ask our two masisipag na panelists na sumagot for their last parting words. For the parting words po. Ano ba to? Ladies first ba, ma'am?
Okay. The Supreme Court ruling actually, as we've been saying, is a welcome development for DILG. This is another milestone in our continuing quest, tama ba yun, for genuine local autonomy and local empowerment. So the clarification by the Supreme Court it's based on the Constitution clarifying the just shares of local government units. And beginning 2022, local governments will have greater fiscal resources to provide for better, yung sinasabi nyo kanina, better services to their constituents. When we mean better, it should be improved, responsive, continuous, kasi from now on until thereafter, it will be their shares. Wala nang bawian, Asek Toredo, no? From 30 to 40. Although we have to caution our local government units that in view of COVID-19, well, this is incidental that we have COVID-19, though the collection of the national government in 2020, which will be the basis for the 2023 shares of local government units, definitely decreased, no? As already reported by DOF. So therefore, the LGU should expect a decrease also in their 2023 national tax allotment. So therefore, we have to caution them on not to expect too much, and kasi there are already questions regarding if they can already put out a loan kasi nag-increase na so that they can maximize the increased resources. But then we have to take note, we have to caution them that by 2022, we don't know by 2024, we are still in a pandemic right now, the collection of the national government, so they have to taper their eagerness to maximize their resources. So with this, actually, we need this Supreme Court ruling implementation requires the systematic and harmonized coordination between national and local government units. Kasi may mawawala, may babawasin sa national, may dadagdag sa local. So how do we now address that? And also, we are seeking the support of our civil society organization and the like, tulad ng academic institution, to help us disseminate information like in forums like this, and to serve us yung lagi naming sinasabi, gabay, kaagapay, at bantay ng ating mga local government. So tatlong aspect yon. So yun, I think it's a whole of government effort to make this Supreme Court ruling works for our local government units and for our constituents, for the betterment of the country and the upliftment of life of every Filipino, so that we can fulfill our aspiration under the Philippine Development Plan. So marami pong salamat.
Salamat po, Asek Toledo po.
Ayan.
Hi, sir. Sama ba natin si sir? Sir, naka ano po kayo? Naka-mute.
Mukhang na-disconnect yata si sir.
Na-disconnect ba si sir?
Nandito naman siya pero
Pa siya. Okay, so hintayin natin maka-connect ulit si sir for his parting shots. At this point, I'd like to thank Director Annalisa Bonagua for devoting some of her very precious time sa ating webinar talk show. Pasensya naman, marami
Thank
kami
you,
tanong.
Ralph.
Pati
Thank you.
participants
Nice to see you
talaga,
again,
maraming
and nice to be
Opo.
back sa CLRG.
Opo, sana po next time face-to-face na ulit. Kaya pag kesa nag-zoom. Ayun po. So, is ASEC back? Okay. Mukhang na-disconnect si sir. So, but we also would like to thank Assistant Secretary Rolando Toledo for diligently answering the questions. I'm pretty sure mahirap sumagot sa tanong habang hindi pa nire-release ang EO. So, and our probing questions tried to sort of grab a sneak peek, pero kasi kailangan pa rin natin talagang intayin yung magiging final contents ng executive order na sana daw ma-release na within the next 2 months. So ayun po, sana po marami nang nagpapasalamat sa inyo sa chat box for sa ating webinar talk show. This is our second. We still have a few more. Ayan na si Sir. Sir, okay, tama-tama po.
Yeah,
Sir,
sorry, I was cut kanina. I don't know where I am kanina.
opo.
What am I saying now? Where are we?
Ano lang po sir, final words from BBM.
All right. Siguro ang masasabi na lang namin, sabi ko nga, with the essential funds that will be made available to LGUs, our local government champions can now take a more active role in providing targeted interventions for their constituents because the Supreme Court decisions posits an opportunity to further empower the LGU's fiscal autonomy. Now, as mentioned ko nga, moving forward, we hope to get both the national government and the local government champions to work together and ensure strong alignment and even synergy of priorities and resources to ensure the smooth transition of devolved functions, services, and facilities. So at this point, siguro gusto ko lang magpasalamat for inviting us, especially me as a resource speaker, to the second leg of your policy issue forum webinar talk show series on the Mandanas Garcia ruling. So thank you and stay safe. Magandang hapon po.
Maraming salamat po ASEC Toledo and Director Bonagua. Wag po kayong madadala. Marami lang po talaga kaming tanong at pati po yung mga participants natin ay masipag silang magtanong. Sana po maulit natin yung ganitong webinar pag mas malinaw na at official ang mga pronouncements tungkol sa implementation ng Mandanas ruling. So at this point po, kung nandito pa kayo sa Zoom, can I ask everyone to please turn on your cameras so we can have a short photo session with our two speakers bago natin sila finally i-release for the afternoon. And my colleagues will take our group picture, but the Wi-Fi or group feed via Zoom. So has everyone turned on your cameras? Ayan. So say, ano bang maganda?
Jeez.
Jeez. Ira
Nata.
NTA na lang.
NTA.
Ayan, so okay ba? Magka-countdown ba ako? 5, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay? Mahirap gumiti ng 5 seconds. Maraming salamat po sa ating dalawang panelists for today. Again, hindi po maubos ang aming pagpapasalamat sa inyo sa papaunlak sa aming imbitasyon. Okay po, see you again po soon siguro. Okay, so final reminders na lang po for our participants. And before we conclude our day, I would like to bring in our director, Professor Alicia B. Celestino of the Center for Local and Regional Governance for her final thoughts.
Okay.
Magandang hapon po, Boss Alice. Nagustuhan mo ba ang ating talk show?
Yes, very much. Okay, thank you, Paeng. We have a very lively discussion this afternoon. Ang daming tanong, di ba? And a lot of questions indicate yung high level of interest ng ating mga participants about the topic. But we have to end this seminar for now, but don't worry, we will have more of this kind in the coming weeks and months. So I'll just give you a very short closing. In closing, I would like, of course, to express our sincere gratitude to the officials of the Department of Budget and Management and the Department of Interior and Local Government for unselfishly sharing your time with us in this webinar in spite of your very busy schedule. Maraming salamat po, Sec Rolando Toledo and Director Annalisa Bonagua for verbalizing the positions of DBM and the ILG concerning the implementation of the Mandanas ruling next year. Thank you po for clarifying pressing issues concerning the implications of transferring functions in support of the previously devolved functions and services to the LGUs. Marami pong salamat for giving us important information. Like for instance, in 2 months' time, nandiyan na yung EO containing yung guidelines on how the Devolution is planned to be implemented. And this will spell out the broad guidelines on, say, one, unbundling of functions. Pero yung mga devolving agencies pa rin will tackle or identify yung specific tasks or functions to be given to the LGUs. And last, thank you po for giving us assurance that the transition devolution plan will be done in a staggered manner or in phased manner so that LGUs will not be totally overwhelmed to absorb more functions. I am sure that LGUs are also relieved to learn that the devolving agencies are expected to provide technical assistance to the LGUs as far as the implementation of the transferred functions are concerned, and that the ILG will ensure that the LGUs are prepared to absorb these functions in terms of their organizational and technical competencies. I'm also sure that many questions of the local officials who joined us this afternoon have been answered, and somehow their anxieties about the impact of the coming transfer of services in support of their devolved functions have been lessened or managed. Of course, there are other questions that could not be answered this afternoon for lack of data to serve as basis in making decisions. So in the coming webinars, we hope that the answers will be available to the unanswered questions as of today. So while waiting for the EO or while waiting for 2022 to come, perhaps LGUs may be given a chance to have dialogues with the devolving agencies as to the specific services or functions to be given to them. This way, malalaman natin yung readiness nila to observe yung additional functions. And perhaps also, this is very controversial. Yung ERA formula can be revisited because studies in the past have shown that the formula is really not equalizing. And there have been recommendations that other criteria, like for instance, yung poverty incidence ng mga LGUs, yung tax collection efficiency nila, should also be factored in the computation of the internal revenue allotment, which is now the national tax allotment. I agree that capacity building measures from national government agencies should include yung local revenue generation mobilization to lessen yung fiscal dependency ng mga LGUs. But of course, this may not be really effective, especially for the poor LGUs like the 5th and 6th income class LGUs na wala talagang tax base or economic base. So in relation to this, I was just wondering in closing if the government would advocate the consolidation or amalgamation of LGUs, especially those that are not economically viable. This could be a longer-term measure to enhance yung fiscal capacity ng mga mahihirap ng LGUs. Well, I'm just thinking kung posible pa ito sa panahon natin ngayon. So with that, again, thank you sa lahat ng mga nag-participate and thank you for the questions that you have asked. I hope that you will continue participating in our upcoming webinars. So that would be all. Paeng, do you have other reminders?
Maraming salamat po kay Director Alice Celestino for those final words. May preview na kayo kung ano ang magiging topics ng aming mga future webinars, ang mga katanungan na gusto naming i-explore. So final reminders po, yung mga participants who registered for certification, depending on the monitoring that we will have in Zoom and in the live stream, you need to have 70% of the total webinar time for Zoom participants and had filled out the attendance form for the live stream participants. Certificates will be released 7 days after this webinar. So pakinote na lang po yun. Bukas po, wag naman sana kayong magtanong kung may certificate na kasi mga 7 days pa po siya. Gagawin pa po namin. Okay? Another reminder, ayan, please fill out our feedback form. You can scan the QR code or go to the link at CTC feedback 2. It will take you to a page in our website where there is an evaluation or a feedback form. At this point, I would like to thank my colleagues who are in the background. Ako po tsaka si Predge ay mukha lang na lumalabas sa screen ng inyong cellphones and laptops or Android TVs. Pero these people who are working behind the scenes are the crucial people who make these webinar talk shows possible. So ayan po yung aming team who are all working remotely, and somehow we still make this possible for you and at no cost to you at all. And this is a part of CLRG and the University of the Philippines' public service. If you would like to be reminded or would like to communicate with us, please visit our Facebook page, our website. Right? Kung gusto ninyong balikan yung ating discussions dun sa first webinar and second webinar and other webinars that CLRG has streamed, you can go to our YouTube page, our YouTube channel, and pwede nyo ang i-replay siya. And now our webinars are also available as a podcast, so you can go to Spotify or Google and subscribe and follow us there so that you can also go back, revisit the points or share with your friends who were not able to join us today, para lang po sa having multipliers for knowledge and information. So yun po, ito po yung aming mga handles. Do visit us at our website at localgov.up.edu.ph. So with that po, we are signing off, and we would like to thank you again and Hope to see you next in our third installment on the Counting the Costs, the Mandanas Ruling webinar series. Maraming salamat po.